The sun hadn't even risen when Daniel's alarm rang, an old, battered clock that rattled more than it rang. In a small, dimly lit room with cracked paint on the walls and the scent of oil and grease lingering in the air, he sat up slowly. His back ached from yesterday's 12-hour shift at the garage, but there was no time to rest. He looked over to the other side of the bed, where his 7-year-old daughter Lily lay curled up in an old, faded blanket. A soft smile touched his lips. This was his whole world. Daniel moved quietly, not wanting to wake her. He heated water in a rusted kettle, ironed her school uniform with care, even though it had frayed cuffs, and made a sandwich with the last few slices of bread. Then, like a ritual, he placed her schoolbooks neatly in a small pink backpack that was already 2 years old. He bent down beside her and whispered, "Lily, sweetheart, it's time to wake up." She opened her eyes and smiled instantly, as if her day began only when she saw her father's face. "Good morning, Daddy." "Good morning, Star," he said with a wink, brushing her hair gently. They didn't have much. They didn't even have a car or a working heater. But what they had was love, and somehow, it kept them warm through the harshest winters. Every morning, Daniel walked his daughter to school, a journey of nearly 4 miles. There was no money for a car, and public transport was unreliable in their neighborhood. But Daniel never complained. In rain or frost, in the heat of summer or the bitter cold of December, he walked. Often, the soles of his shoes were worn thin, and sometimes he patched them up with duct tape. People would pass him by in luxury sedans, some glancing, some ignoring, but none stopping. He didn't care. He wasn't walking out of necessity. He was walking with pride. Every step he took was a silent message: "My daughter deserves to get to school safe. And I'll make sure of it, even if my feet bleed." He held Lily's tiny hand as they walked. He would ask her about her dreams, make up silly songs to make her laugh, and tell her stories about stars and superheroes. And every day, just before they reached the school gates, he would kneel and say, "Do your best. Be kind. And remember, your daddy loves you more than the whole world." She would hug him tightly and skip off with joy. What Daniel didn't know, was that someone had been watching. Principal Margaret Jenkins was a seasoned educator in her 50s. Stern yet fair, respected by both staff and parents. She had seen hundreds of students come and go over her 2 decades of service, but there was something about Lily that tugged at her heart. The little girl had extraordinary manners, quiet confidence, and a light in her eyes that made her stand out, even when her shoes were worn, or her lunch was simple. One chilly morning, while sipping coffee in her office, Principal Jenkins happened to glance out the window. She saw a man in a faded coat walking beside a little girl, holding an umbrella over her while getting drenched himself. Curious, she watched again the next day. And the next. It became a quiet ritual. Every morning, Jenkins arrived early and stood behind her blinds, watching the man and his daughter make that journey. She noticed how he fixed Lily's collar. How he kissed her forehead. How he stood outside the gate until she disappeared inside, only then turning back with slow, heavy steps. There was something noble in his struggle. Something deeply moving in his silence. What no one at the school knew was Daniel's past, a chapter he never opened, not even when asked. Years ago, he had been married to Marcia, a beautiful woman with expensive tastes and bigger ambitions than Daniel could afford. In the beginning, they were happy. But when Lily was born, bills piled up. The garage where Daniel worked reduced wages. Rent increased. The fridge was often half empty. And then came that night. Marcia stood with a suitcase in one hand, and her phone in the other. "I can't do this anymore, Daniel," she said coldly. "You're poor. I didn't sign up for this life." Daniel looked stunned. "But, we're a family. We'll get through it. I'll work harder." She scoffed. "Work harder? Look at you. You're always covered in grease. We can't even afford a decent dinner." She turned to leave, but before she stepped out, she said something that shattered him completely. "Keep your daughter. She's a burden. I can't carry dead weight anymore." And just like that, she was gone. Daniel sat on the floor that night, holding 2-year-old Lily in his arms, her innocent eyes staring up at him, confused and tearful. He whispered into her tiny ear. "I don't know what tomorrow holds, sweetheart. But I promise you, I will never let you feel abandoned again. I will become someone. And I will raise you into someone the world can never ignore." That night, something changed in him. He took double shifts. Skipped meals. Gave up every luxury. For Lily, and only for Lily. And through all those sacrifices, he never let her feel that she lacked anything. Not love. Not protection. Not hope. Daniel did exactly what he had promised himself. He worked hard, day and night. He started by repairing old cars. Some old friends gave him loans, some sent customers, someone offered him space for a workshop. His honesty and dedication slowly built his name throughout the city. Within just 3 years, he had opened a successful auto garage, a small car showroom, and an online parts distribution business. The day wasn't far when the same man, once called a failure by his wife, was now attending local business award ceremonies. His story was featured in the media, and Lily, his daughter, became the shining star of that success. And then, one day, there was a knock on the door. It was Marcia, changed, tired, disheveled hair, a dull face. She didn't have a luxury car anymore, nor expensive clothes. The woman who had once abandoned everything for money and power stood now, empty-handed and with hollow eyes. She quietly said, "I have nothing left. The man I went with, he was already married. His first wife was living in another country. She suddenly returned, threw me out of the house, and even took the business back from me. I have nowhere to go, no place to stay." Daniel's response, a mirror of dignity. Daniel stood silently. Then he looked at Lily, now a school topper and a city-level debater. He turned to Marcia and, in a calm but firm voice, said, "Marcia, life is a mirror. It gives back what we offer it. You left me, insulted my poverty, and even called your own daughter a burden. Today, that same daughter is my pride. You say you have no place left, but in our lives, there is no place for you anymore. We've learned how to live, without you." Marcia's tears kept falling, but Daniel's heart was no longer weak. He closed the door, not forever, but only on the pain that had arrived with her. This is not just the story of a father, but of a man who was broken in love but never fought back with hate. Instead, he rose stronger, proving that the best revenge is success, and the greatest strength is not in forgiveness, but in letting go.